Hello! This short video will show you how to prepare your data for quiz number 6, and we'll deal with the Seattle Terry stop data. Alright, let's go ahead and get started then. First things first, I need to go to the website that contains the data, which is here, provided on our course webpage. So we'll go ahead and click that link. Here's where I can get the data. There's information about the data here. So real quickly, there's about 50,000 rows, and I have 23 different columns on this data. Each row is a unique Terry stop, as reported by the officer conducting the stop. There's lots of variables in this data set, and the ones that we're going to be working with here is the officer gender, also the perceived gender of the subject being arrested or frisked or stopped, I guess. And then the responses that I care about is either the arrest flag, which simply indicates if an arrest was made, or a frisk flag, which indicates whether or not frisk was done with that police stop. To get a copy of this data, I need to just select export, and then I can either select the CSV file or CSV for Excel. We'll go ahead and get that started. Now this is going to take a moment to download because it is a pretty big file. So I'm going to hit pause here, and I will be right back. Okay, now that file has been successfully downloaded onto my computer, and it is here in the downloads folder on my computer here. So the next thing then is to create a spot or upload that into your Gmail or Google Drive so that I can open it in Google Sheets and work with it. So here I've created a folder, Quiz 6, where I'm going to put that file. So I just need to drag that file then from my computer up to my Google Drive. To open that inside of Google Sheets, all I need to do is double click on that file and then select Open with Google Sheets. Now again, this is going to take a moment just because there is lots of information here. We had information on 50,000 different stops, so just be patient, and that file will load here. So again, this has many. It has many 50,000 rows or whatever. It goes all the way down here. It's a long ways. Yep, 50,625 rows of information there. And then I have lots of information going across. Again, we're going to work with the officer gender and the subject's perceived gender there, as well as the arrest flag or the frisk flag over here. So just indicating whether or not an arrest or frisk took place at that stop. I'm going to start by creating a new variable. So I'm going to go ahead and do a right click and say insert a new column. And I'm going to call this column gender match. And all I want to do is just indicate whether or not the gender of the officer matched the subject's perceived gender. To do this, I'm going to apply a data filter, okay, to the data. So we haven't done this before. So I'll show you how to do a data filter. I'm going to select all of the data here. So above the 1 and to the left of the A, and I'm going to say under data, create a filter. And what that's going to do is allow me to make a selection on certain rows. So what I want to do first is just identify only the male officers. Notice that row 13 and 14 were actually a female officer. But when I look at only the male officers, I can do that by selecting the drop-down and selecting only males from the options. So when I do this, I'm only going to have male officers now. Notice that row 13 and 14 are hidden from me because those again contained female officers. So a filter here has been applied, and what that is doing is showing you just the male officers. Now I also want to do that with the subject being male. So let me come over here and I can clear all and only get the male subjects. So these are the rows where the officer and the subject perceived gender were both male. So I'm going to give that a yes in the gender match column. Because again, the officer's gender and the perceived gender of the subject were both male. So I'm going to say yes, that they match there. Once I have that in there, okay, correctly specified there, I'm going to just double click on that lower right corner, and what that's going to do is fill in all of the rest of the rows for me. Okay, now let's do the officer gender was male, but the perceived gender was female. So I want to deselect the male there and select female. Now these are not matches. The officer was a male, but the subject was a female. So I want to put these as no. Again, I'm going to double click, and that should fill the rest of the remaining rows there. Now I want to do, let's go and do the rows where the officer was female. So let's change that to female. And the perceived gender of the subject was female. So these would be a match here, right? So let's change that to a yes. Make sure and get that in correctly. Double click all the way down. Now the only other combination that I haven't done is female officer, male subject. So that would be a no, they don't match. So I need to do that combination as well. Double click. So again, these don't match. Now if I turn off my filters, we can check to see if all of this has been done correctly. So to turn those off, all I need to do is select all the different options here. So that will show me all of the rows. So let's do some checking here. Male, male here, male and male, that should match. Here's a male, male, that should match. This row is blank because I don't know the gender of the subject. Here's a male, right? But a female subject, male officer, female subject, so those don't match. So this is looking good. It looks like my gender match column is correct now. Once I have that column, now I can use that in a pivot table. So again, like in class, to create a pivot table, I'm just going to select all my data, and underneath Insert, I'm going to say Pivot Table here. Don't have to do anything on that first step, just hit Create. And this is going to take a moment because it is going to actually do a suggested pivot table, and I don't want that. I'm going to make my own. So on the rows, I'm going to be selecting whether or not the gender matched, so that new variable that I created. So no, the gender did not match between the officer and the subject, or yes, the gender did match between the officer and the subject. The columns are going to be whether or not a frisk was done. So let's go ahead and do frisk flag there. So no, a frisk was not done, or yes, a frisk was done. The values are going to be just again on my response. So I'm going to select, I'm going to select the frisk flag again for my values. And by default, I want to count. Okay, so that is good. I do have a little bit of, let's go ahead and just clean this up a little bit, maybe make things centered so we can see things a little bit better. You can see that I have some blanks and some dashes here. I have a blank row here as well. Okay, so out of the 50,000 stops, there's 650 where I did not have information about whether or not the gender matched. I'm not too worried about those. I'm just going to exclude those from the quiz. So to exclude certain rows, I have to apply filters here. So I need a filter on gender match, and I want to deselect the blanks. So the blanks here are going to be turned off. So now I should just have the no's and yeses. I also need to deselect the dashes here, so they don't know whether or not a frisk was done. Again, out of the 50,000 or so, I'm just going to exclude the 400 there. So I need to add another filter for the frisk and deselect the dashes. So real data always has issues like this that we need to deal with. Okay, there's my table then. This is whether or not gender matched and whether or not a frisk was done. We usually use the row percentages, right? Like we talked in class. And to put those on, what I need to do is underneath, to put those on, what I need to do is under my values, I need to change those to percent of row. So we can see that about, 15% of the time when the gender did not match between the officer and the subject, there was a frisk that was done. But if the gender between the officer and the subject matches, that increases up to about 25%. Real quickly, to make a graph with this, again, we want to highlight the data that I want to plot. Underneath Insert, I'm going to select Chart. And the graph that we usually end up making are the 100% stacked column graphs. So these here. To add the data values, so this is no, the gender did not match. Yes, the gender did match. This is yes, they were frisked, and the blue is no, they were not. Again, to add the data values, what you need to do is just select the blue boxes here, and then there's an option over here to add the data labels. And then I want those same numbers on the red boxes, so I can add the data labels on the red boxes. So again, these are situations, this bar over here is situations where the gender did match. About 26% of the time a frisk was done. When the gender did not match, only about 15.5% of the time a frisk was done. Again, like I said in class, this graph is sits over the top of your table. So if you want to see your table, you have to move that graph around. Okay, I am going to have you work a little bit as well with the year. So whether or not I had changes in this relationship across years. And to work with year, what I need to do, we can see that the reported date here, we can see that the reported date is here. And the year is the first, it's the left 4 characters in the date. So what I'm going to do is insert another column. I'm going to call this one year. And then the function that I'm going to do this, I'm going to use a function to do this, is equal left of this cell. And what that should do, equal left, and I want 4, so I should do comma 4 there as well. What that's going to do is grab the first 4 digits in this date, which is the year. So let's go ahead, equal left, N2, because that's where the date's at, and then 4. Hit enter, and it's going to say, do you want that auto-filled all the way down? And we're going to say yes. Now I have a year variable here that I can use when I'm creating my different displays. So I think what I'm going to have you do here is go ahead and look at this relationship and see how it changed from, let's say, 2018, 19 to maybe 20, or maybe we shouldn't do 20. But I just want to look at how that relationship is going to change across years. So what I can do is add another filter on year. And just simply select the year that I want to talk about. So if I ask you to consider 2018, let's just only select 2018. So as soon as I hit OK here, all of these numbers are going to be just for 2018. I mean, that's what a filter does, is it allows you just to look at one particular year at a time. So let's see how these are the numbers over all the years. What do the numbers look like for 2018? Well, they go to about 12 and 24%. What would these numbers look like for 2019? Well, all I got to do is select 2019 now. In 2019, these numbers go to, oh, they go up a little bit, 17 and 25. So they actually are becoming a little bit more equal here in 2019. So that's how I can look at the effective year over this relationship of gender versus frisk and the likelihood of being frisked. How does that vary over year? Well, you can just put year here in the filter box. If you want to take that back out, you can just turn it off by putting the X, and now I'm back to what I had originally, which is over all of the years in the data set. Okay, I think that does it for the data prep video for quiz number 6. If you have questions, we can ask and talk about it in class next time. Thank you. Have a good day.